Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this honestly. How long have you been waiting on God for something? A breakthrough, a relationship, a business idea, a sign, and nothing has moved. A month? A year? 5 years? And in all that time, have you actually done anything differently? Or have you just been still, praying the same prayer, asking the same questions, going to sleep in the same situation you woke up in? Because here's the thing, nobody in your church, your family, or your faith community is brave enough to say out loud. Sometimes what you're calling waiting on God is just fear with a spiritual costume on. And that's not me attacking your faith. That's me respecting it enough to tell you the truth. We grew up hearing it. Be still and know that He is God. Wait on the Lord, and He will renew your strength. And these are real. These words carry real power. But somewhere along the line, we took a principle meant to build inner peace and turned it into an excuse for outer paralysis. We turned stillness into stagnation. We turned surrender into avoidance. And the result? People with real gifts, real callings, real potential, sitting on the sidelines of their own lives, telling themselves they're being faithful, when really they're just terrified to move. You know the person I'm describing. Maybe you are that person. The one who keeps saying, God hasn't opened the door yet, but hasn't knocked. The one who says, I'm waiting for confirmations, but hasn't taken a single step that would require confirmations. The one who says, it's in God's hands, but hasn't used their own hands to do anything. I want to show you something, because this waiting theology, it's not even biblical. Not when you actually look closely. Think about Moses. Moses didn't wait at the edge of the Red Sea and say, God, whenever you're ready. No, God literally said to him, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move, move. God told Moses to act first. And it was when Moses lifted the staff, when he made the physical move, that the sea began to split. The miracle followed the movement. Think about Joshua and the Israelites at the Jordan River. The water didn't part while the priests stood on the bank praying. The Bible says, the moment their feet touched the water, the moment they stepped in, the river stopped flowing. The miracle required them to get their feet wet first. Think about the 10 lepers who came to Jesus asking to be healed. He didn't heal them on the spot. He said, go show yourselves to the priests. And then, this is the part we always gloss over. As they went, they were healed. Not before, not while they stood still. As they went. Are you seeing the pattern? In story after story, the miracle didn't come to people who were waiting. It came to people who were moving. So where does this passive waiting theology even come from? Why are so many genuinely spiritual, genuinely faithful people stuck in this mindset? Here's what I think, and I think you already know this somewhere deep down. Waiting is safe. When you're waiting, you can't fail. You can't be wrong. You can't make a mistake, because you haven't done anything. And there's something deeply comforting about handing all the responsibility to God, telling yourself, I'll move when He tells me, because then if nothing happens, it's not your fault. God just hasn't spoken yet. God just hasn't opened the door. But what if the door is unlocked, and you just haven't turned the handle? What if God has already spoken, through your passion, through your pattern of thinking, through the problem you can't stop wanting to solve, and you've been waiting for a louder voice because the one in your chest feels too ordinary? Here's a real-life scenario, and I want you to think about someone you know when I say this. There's a woman, let's call her a Daisy. She's been wanting to start a business for 3 years. She prays about it. She journals about it. She watches YouTube videos about it, maybe even ones like this. She tells herself, when God gives me a clear sign, I'll move. But every time she gets close, something in her says, not yet, wait, it's not perfect. And 3 years later, she's in the same job, same salary, same prayer journal, same unfulfilled idea. Was she waiting on God, or was she waiting for courage and calling it God? This is where it gets uncomfortable, because there's a version of spiritual waiting that is absolutely real and necessary. There are seasons where stillness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you've done everything you can and now you need God to move something that's beyond your power. That kind of waiting is surrender, it's trust, it's powerful. But you know the difference. Deep down, you know the difference between the stillness of a person who has planted seeds and is now trusting the rain, and the stillness of someone who hasn't even bought the seeds yet. One is faith after action, the other is fear dressed as faith. And the devastating truth is, both people use the same language. Both people say, "I'm trusting God." Both people quote the same scriptures, but only one of them is actually in motion. So let me give you a framework, something practical, something you can use today. I call it the 3-step test, and it's simple. Step 1. Write down the thing you're waiting on God for. The business, the relationship, the healing, the breakthrough, whatever it is, write it down. Step 2. Write down every single action you could take right now, this week, that is within your power, even if the outcome isn't. Not the miracle steps, not the ones that require divine intervention, just the human steps. Research, a conversation, a call, a draft, a payment, a commitment. Write them all down. Step 3. Count how many of those actions you've actually taken. If the list is empty, if you haven't done any of the things within your reach, then you're not waiting on God. You're waiting on yourself. And no amount of prayer will close that gap. Because here's what I believe with everything in me. God moves in the space between your effort and the miracle. He fills the gap you can't fill, but he doesn't fill gaps you refuse to create. I remember a mentor telling me something once that I hated hearing in the moment, but I've never forgotten. He said, "God isn't late, you're just early to the starting line and refusing to run." Think about that. You've positioned yourself for a race. You know the direction. You've even prayed about the race, but you're just standing at the starting line, expecting the finish line to come to you. Momentum is spiritual. Movement is an act of faith. When you move, you're essentially telling God, "I trust you enough to step into the unknown." And that trust, that physical, tangible, costly demonstration of trust, is often what releases what you've been praying for. Here's what I want you to consider. What if waiting has cost you more than moving ever could have? What is the price of 3 more years of stillness? What relationships won't happen? What impact won't be felt? What version of yourself won't emerge? The person you're supposed to become is not being built in the waiting room. They're being built on the road. The courage you need for your calling doesn't appear before the first step. It appears because of the first step, and then the second, and then the third. The strength comes in the doing, not in the deciding. So here's where I want to land with you. Stop waiting for a lightning bolt when you have a match in your hand. Stop asking God to open a door you haven't walked toward yet. Stop calling yourself faithful when what you really are is fearful, because calling it faith doesn't change what it costs you. Start small, start messy, start scared, because the God you believe in, he's not sitting in heaven frustrated that you moved too soon. He's far more patient with your imperfect action than he is with your comfortable inaction. Here's your challenge for this week. Just one thing, one step you've been putting off, one conversation you've been avoiding, one decision you've been stalling. Take it this week, not because you have all the answers, not because you're ready, not because you have a guarantee, but because you believe enough to move. That's it. That's faith. And if this video woke something up in you, if you feel that uncomfortable, slightly irritated, slightly convicted feeling in your chest right now, good. That means you needed to hear this. Share it with someone else who needs to hear it too. Subscribe if you want more content that doesn't sugarcoat the truth. And drop a comment below. Tell me, what's the one thing you've been waiting on that you know, deep down, it's time to move on? I'll see you in the next one.